And so you'll see that this meeting is being recorded. So welcome. Again, my name is Veronica Aplenc, and I'm the Center City Residents Association Zoning Committee co-chair, and I'll be leading this meeting tonight. So I'll go ahead and get us started. Welcome to the Center City Residents Association Zoning Committee. The CCRA is a 75-year-old nonprofit civic association. As a nonprofit, we encourage everyone to become a member, which can easily be done through our website. There are several benefits to being a member, one of which is being notified of all proposed zoning changes within our area. Oh. And if you can give me just one moment, I'm playing tech host as well, and I'm going to admit 2 more folks. So back to our introduction. The CCRA is the recognized registered community organization, RCO, for our area. Our boundaries are from South Street to JFK and Broad Street to the Schuylkill River. Our committee works as follows. First, applicants are to present. We ask applicants to address. We ask. Let me try one more time because I'm also managing the tech things at this time. Let's try again. So our committee works as follows. First, applicants are to present. We ask applicants to address the specific refusals or referrals. We ask for no interruptions as applicants give their full presentation. After the presentation, the zoning committee will have a chance to ask questions. After the zoning committee's questions are completed, we open the meeting to the community. When addressed, we ask that you state your name and address. We ask that you keep your questions succinct and to the variance being discussed. We also ask that people not repeat others' questions. If you agree with someone's position, you're welcome to simply state that you agree. If there's a spokesperson for the neighbors, we ask that this person speak for the group. After we close from all applicants and listen to the community concerns, our committee votes and meets in closed session. We vote in one of 3 ways. 1, oppose; 2, not oppose; 3, not oppose with provisos. The CCRA never votes in favor of any application. Our decision is emailed to the councilperson, the ZBA, and the applicant. Important, no matter how we decide, if you are concerned with a project, we strongly recommend that you attend the ZBA meeting. This is the best way to make your concerns known. The CCRA zoning committee cannot express the neighbor's point of view. Only a property owner or aggrieved individual may express their personal concerns to the ZBA. And with that said, we have 3 properties on the agenda tonight. And I understand that they're going to be presented as a single group. And so our properties are 516 South 21st Street, the application for demolition of existing structure on the lot and for the erection of an attached structure with roof decks. Size and location is shown on the plan. The reason for a refusal is that the proposed building height, 41 feet 6 inches, is more than the maximum allowed building height, which is 38 feet, and is refused. The second property, which is part of this one project, is 518 South 21st Street. This is an application for full demolition of an existing structure on a lot and for the erection of an attached structure with roof deck to serve as single-family household living with 1 accessory off-street parking space. Size and location is shown on the plan. And the reason for the refusal is that off-street parking shall not be provided for any 1-family or 2-family use located in the residential parking control area, except for parking accessed by a shared driveway or rear alley, which is permitted but not required. The maximum building height allowed is 38 feet, whereas the proposed 41 feet 6 inches is above and refused. And the off-street parking minimum depth required is 18 feet, whereas the proposed depth is 15 feet and is refused. And then the third proper address that's part of this project is 2104 Nowdane Street. The application for the complete demolition of an existing attached structure, for the erection of an attached structure with 1 accessory surface parking lot and 1 non-accessory surface parking lot, size and locations per plans. for the use as single-family household living with accessory parking and for the use of off-site non-accessory parking. And the reason for referral is off-street parking shall not be provided for any one-family or two-family use located in the residential parking control area, except for parking accessed by a shared driveway or a rear alley, which is permitted but not required. Common parking areas may be located on one or more of the properties for which parking is provided, or on a property that is separated from those properties by an alley, shared driveway, or similar kinds of passageways. Whereas the proposed parking is not accessed by a rear driveway or a rear alley. Rodman Street is not an alley and no shared driveway is proposed. And the proposed use of off-site non-accessory parking is prohibited in the RSA 5 zoning district. And the minimum width of a regular parking space set at a 90-degree angle from the drive aisle is 8.5 feet, whereas the proposed parking space width of 7.5 feet is prohibited. And the maximum building height allowed is 38 feet, whereas the proposed height of 41 feet 6 inches is prohibited. And just in a reminder, we'll be discussing these as refusals. And in the case of a refusal, the burden is on the applicant to demonstrate why the community should accept the zoning change. So with that of our introduction, I'd like to ask, do we have a representative of the property here?
Yes, hello. This is Sean Whalen from Vintage Law on behalf of the owners and developers of the property.
Hello, Sean. So what I'd like to do is I'm going to enable share screen, and I welcome you to present your project.
Thank you so much. I will, while I'm sharing my screen, I will suggest that, yes, these are 3 separate properties. Hopefully you can see my screen now saying 516 South 21st Street, 518 South 21st Street, and 2104 Naudane Street. Again, these are 2 neighborhood developers who are doing this project. This is 3 individual homes, but we are presenting them together because they will be developed together, and they're sort of thought of in the development plan as one. And I will walk through the refusals, and while they were absolutely stated correctly as they are on the refusals, I think I can explain why we got so many refusals and take some of the confusion away from what all of those refusals mean. So I'll do this first preliminary introduction, and then you see here Lauren Thompson Design. Lauren Thompson is on the meeting as well, and she'll walk you through the actual nuts and bolts of the design and purposes. So in short, I'd like to start you with a pretty picture. This is 516 and 518 South 21st Street. This would be Rodman, 21st Street, and here is Naudane right here, and this is 2104 Naudane. So what you're looking at right now is our proposed rendering of the homes we'd like to build at the site, and then secondarily, this is what the homes currently look like. So you can see here, 2104 Naudane has a curb cut. It's a small garage. And I know that, certainly some people on this call know this extremely well. So I'll try not to belabor any points, but I just want to make sure everyone has the same context while we go forward. So again, there's a curb cut with a 1-story sort of unfinished garage there. There's another curb cut here with a front-loaded garage off of South 21st Street, and 2 homes at 516 and 518 going to the corner. So here's a little bit of context. You can see South 21st Street going here, Naudane and Rodman. And what you can see is 516, 518, and 2104 Naudane are actually, even though they have 3 separate street addresses, even they do actually touch each other in the rear, and you can see it maybe even a little better. Each one is zoned RSA 5, single family. The 2 homes on South 21st Street are existing and have existing single family houses there. There is, like I said, just that sort of first floor unfinished garage on Naudane. The first thing to note would be that our project would actually be removing the curb cut at Naudane and returning that that space on the street back to the neighborhood. And it would also be removing the curb cut from 516 South 21st that goes right into the new bike lane and kind of disrupts the entire pedestrian flow up and down South 21st. So again, here's just a little bit of context. You can see here's Naudane, which is unfinished. 518 South 21st Street is 100% lot coverage as it exists currently. As it is proposed, it will be brought back down to be commensurate with the rest of the neighborhood and in line with the code. So it will not be 80, it will be 80% lot coverage, not 100% lot coverage. So there will be a rear yard reinstalled, and 516 South 21st Street is right here. Just sort of flipping around, you can see, again, 100% lot coverage sort of overburdens Rodman Street, and they both front onto South 21st. So this whole rear portion of the property will not be seen and will be demolished once the entire property will be demolished. I misspoke. And only the front portion here will be rebuilt with a rear yard. So again, just a couple of contextual photos to show you what the current view looks like. And again, and here is where I will just about finish up and turn it over to Lauren so we don't waste anyone's time this evening. This is, I don't know if anyone can see this well, so I'll zoom in. My eyes seem to be getting worse and worse by the day, so tell me if you can't see it. So here's the proposed home on Naudane, going back, and here are the new proposed homes at 516 and 518. Again, we're getting rid of the existing curb cut, or we are proposing to get rid of the existing curb cut on South 21st Street for that front-loaded garage, and we are proposing to get rid of the existing curb cut here at Naudane and turning that kind of garage roll door into a full single-family house. This right here, maybe I can even zoom in a little bit more for everybody. This right here is the rear yards. This is all of the parking issues for the property. So all of those refusals that were listed off as to the parking is simply because there will be one car off-street parking for each of the homes, and that is accessed off of Rodman. This is Rodman down here, and each of those parking refusals is simply related to the fact that you have these proposed parking spaces in the rear of the properties and spanning. So here's the property line for 516, here's the property line for 518, and here's the property line for 2104 Naudane. So as you can see, the Naudane Street property has no problems because it has one parking spot right on its lot. However, the second parking space for 516 South 21st Street does span actually multiple property lines, and that is where the genesis of these refusals come from. And here's the third parking spot, which again is only shown to go up to this property line and would actually continue up into 516. So again, if these were, if this had been planned as a planned unit development, sort of a condo of the land, if you would, all of these parking refusals would go away, but it was decided that we would keep these individual properties as separate, and that this parking will be addressed and set forth in a parking easement across the three properties to be recorded against the properties at that time. So with that, I would turn it over to Lauren, and you can tell me where you want to start.
Thanks, Sean. Thanks everyone for the opportunity to present this evening. I think here's a good place to start. So you can see we have 3 single-family residences. Sean, could you zoom in just a tad? That would be very helpful. And they are all 3 proposed 4-story single-family residences with occupied roof decks. And we are not seeking a variance for lot coverage, and our variance for height is minimal, considering what the by right limit for RSA 5 is at 38 feet. We are doing a number of strategies to develop in a contextually sensitive way, which are evident on the site plan, and some of which Sean has mentioned before. The first is we're removing the 100% lot coverage at 518 to the south, and we're proposing to replace that with a building that is equivalent of a by right lot coverage, and taking a parking space, proposing a parking space for that. The parking we're proposing as pervious, pervious paving. And so that would mean that it would not, it would have a less of an impact than regular paving on stormwater, and be better for stormwater management in that sense. At 516, we have an existing curb cut that we propose to remove. This existing curb cut is going across a bike lane, which is obviously dangerous. And we propose to replace that with a new residence that will have off-street accessory parking in the rear between the off-street accessory parking for 2104 and the off-street accessory parking for 518 to the right. And on Naudane, lastly, to go over the curb cuts, we have the existing curb cut there serving the existing garage, and we are eliminating that on Naudane Street, providing a new off-street parking, or providing additional off-street parking, and accessing that by an existing curb cut that is on Rodman. So effectively, we're proposing to extend an existing curb cut that exists on Rodman Street. All 3 of the residences are proposed to have mansard roofs so that we can maintain the cornice line. And this is just an existing site plan showing the lot coverage. Here are our floor plans. Thanks, Sean. Which are very similar for the 3 residents. Nuance changes at 516 and 518 were 15 feet wide, 41 feet deep, 41.6 deep. At 2104 were 16 feet wide and 41 feet 6 deep. Here we see the proposed building elevations. We're proposing to use brick with a strong cornice, a bay window for added square footage because they are small lots. But we're not doing a square new bay where we've angled the sides and clad the bays in brick. We're proposing simulated divided light mullions and encasement and or double hung windows with hardy above the mansard. We're showing site sections to demonstrate kind of the impact of the height on the neighbors, and also the height effectively as it relates to the existing context. Naudane Street has a number of buildings which are different in cornice line. So I'd say there isn't a strong cornice line on Naudane Street at this time, which we are highlighting on both the south and the north sides of the blocks. Next slide. Cutting through 21st Street, we can see that there are buildings that are tall in the immediate adjacent context, which is 511 South 21st, which is kitty corner to the site to the north. We've done a solar study of the proposed new construction, so we can see the shadows that the buildings will cast at the the summer solstice, the equinox, and also the winter solstice when you have the least light. So this is the proposed design, as you can see, at 8 a.m., 12 p.m., and 4 p.m. as the sun tracks around. South would be to the bottom left of all of the images. If you want to go to the next. We've also done a by right comparison, as we're only 3.5 feet different, which in fact, this 3.5 feet could be a solid guardrail or parapet. So, and what we're proposing is an open guardrail that won't effectively impact the light as much as possible. Another strategy we're using is the removal of the pilot houses from these roof decks to eliminate that additional mass on the top of the buildings. And then if you go one more slide down, Sean, here is a side-by-side comparison, and you can see that there's really very little effective difference in terms of the solar impact. We've done some imagery just to show what the buildings will look like in the context based on existing photos. So you can see here, this is 518 and 516 in context. And we've done our best to really work to make the design contextually sensitive to the neighborhood, to the city, you know, fitting in with the kind of masonry tectonic, and that's typical mansard, heavy cornice, and also scale and proportion. Here we've got 2104 Naudane, which is their similar exterior expression. We can also see on the left, it's difficult to see because the street is very narrow, but the blue building on Naudane is actually one that is a taller building. The exact address is escaping me right now, but it's in one of our site sections. And so there is precedent for taller buildings on Naudane. And it would be our goal to kind of maintain that cornice line and then build above with the mansard. Lastly, this is just our image kind of showing the three buildings in context and how we think it would be a kind of a boon to the fabric from what is there that exists. We're not showing here street trees, but we've also proposed those as part of the design and development strategy with streets department approval, of course. So I think with that, that's our presentation.
Yeah, and I would just jump in that we have reached out through LNI and streets. We are interested in following up on what Lauren just said. We are interested in adding as many street trees with true tree pits as possible. If I can, sorry, maybe I can just jump to it so everyone can be on the same page. So again, here's the currently existing, there's a tree here. Because of all these utility lines and in determining with PWD and this and LNI where the utilities are underneath the either sidewalk and or in the street, we actually need, we can't confirm exactly where we can put additional street trees, but we will be adding as many as possible. And it's just an issue that we have to be told basically where we are allowed to break into the walking zone in order to put those without damaging any kind of city storm or sewer. So with that, we're happy to answer any questions that you may have.
Well, thank you both for that very clear presentation. What I'll do now is I'll go through the committee members and I'll ask them in order if they have any questions. And after that, I'll open it up to the public. So I'll just go in order as I see the committee names on our list here. Ben Weinrob, can I start with you? Any questions?
Yes, thank you. Just a hardship question, is there? And if so, what?
Yes, so we are, the immediate premise of this project is that we could certainly build by right, and we're not going to, lie to anybody and say that we couldn't. Unfortunately, the build by right is a front-loaded garage on Naudane, a front-loaded garage at 516, and 100% lot coverage at 518. And so, I mean, to be frank, we didn't like that project. If we're looking at all three lots together, we didn't like the idea of the way that sat in the neighborhood. And, you know, we are proposing the variance because we believe that it is a better overall project, not only because we prefer it, but because we believe that it's better for the neighborhood. And we certainly hope that you guys agree too. You know, certainly there would also be additional height in the, you know, what we're proposing right now is no pilot houses. So the by right build would include 10-foot pilot houses. So there would be, you know, actually increased height of about 7.5 feet over and above what we're showing here on the variance plan. So the, you know, and again, there is, if you look at the site plan, and I don't want to be jumping around to disorient people, but happy to go to it if need be. You know, in order to put car parking in the rear, the appropriate place is off of Rodman, which is rear access parking for a number of houses, including adjacent to us. And so that's why we've proposed what we're proposing tonight.
Thank you. Ben W, are any more questions?
No, thank you.
Great. Ben Zuckerman.
Similar question about the height issue. You are going above what is permitted. If I understood you correctly, you could have pilot houses up there that would be actually higher than the proposed roofs. Is that correct? And since you don't want pilot houses, why do you want this height for these three homes?
Yes, certainly. So I'll address the start, and then maybe Lauren can tag team in with me to give you a more complete description of the extra 3 feet. So yeah, as I said, we looked at a by right project here, and you know, the developers, who are both neighborhood residents, simply thought that's not what they wanted to do in the neighborhood. But by right, if you were building a new home here, you would get 38 feet. On top of the 38 feet, you would actually have a 3.5 foot parapet wall. So what you would see along the street frontage would actually be 41.5 feet. So it'd be the same overall height that you would see with the parapet wall, although the interior roof line, the cornice line, so to speak, would be at 38 feet. What we've done is, on top of that, you are allowed also an additional up to 10 feet for a pilot house to access a roof deck. Each of these homes would certainly have a roof deck, and you know, would be highly desirable in this neighborhood to have a roof deck. So here, what we've done is, because we recognize that we were asking for increased height, instead of that higher parapet, 3.5 foot parapet wall, we're asking for just overall 3.5 feet extra. And then on top of that, removing the pilot houses in an attempt of, you know, coming here with our best foot forward. What you won't see tonight, and what you won't hear from Lauren or I or either of the developers, is what most people present is a trumped up plan that has, you know, 45 feet and big and scary, and then we can act like we're good actors by willingly, you know, cutting off things that we weren't interested in the beginning. We didn't want to disrespect you with that, so we decided to just come with what we thought was our best foot forward, and that is the additional height which we wanted. And then Lauren, if you could just describe where those extra 3.5 feet come from.
Sure, absolutely. I'm ultimately, it's a better, it's an easier drainage strategy to have the pilot house, but we wanted to do that. Thought it was more appropriate for the neighbors in order to reduce that. The 3.5 feet, it allows us to have a 4th story and a relatively small building footprint and a small home ultimately. So it's adding 600 feet of livable space and making it, more livable for a greater number of people. But I think Sean did a good job describing it. What we've done is our best to minimize that impact by making it a mansard, by maintaining the cornice line, and by minimizing that the parapet walls and pilot house impact. We could probably squeeze it down to get 4 stories of living space if we were to have the building entry right at grade. But what we also wanted to do is kind of maintain the stoop language and have the entry level of the building be relatively similar to the adjacent buildings, which also felt contextually appropriate. So we have our first floor at 18 inches off grade and are moving up from there. But this allows us to have buildings that are 2,500 square feet above grade. So they're not enormous homes, but they're livable and useful and nicely designed, I'd say.
One other question. Looking at the rendering here,
Mhm.
it looks like there is a roof deck with, looks like glass railings around it on 516 and 518. I'm not sure if you're proposing a roof deck for Naudane.
Yes, we are. It's a little
I
hard
thought
to
so.
tell in the clouds. We went with a clear material again to try to minimize the height. We are required. So again, there's no pilot house. We're going to have just direct access stairs up from the 4th floor to the roof deck. And then we have this roof deck railing setback off of the street so that you wouldn't actually see it from the pedestrian view as you were walking along the street in front of the homes. And then it would be clear to, again, minimize as much as we could any impact from the additional height.
Okay. And one housekeeping item, I have to send out the decision letter, and I don't, Sean, I don't have your email address. If you could just put it in the chat box to Ben
Certainly.
Zuckerman. Thanks.
Yeah, let me see.
That's all.
All right, thank you, Ben. All right, coming down our list, Bob Lane. Do you have any questions?
Yep, thanks, Veronica. I just have 2. The first is pretty easy. I guess it's to Sean. Is this in the any historic district? Do you have any historical restrictions?
We do not.
Yeah, I didn't think this would go down that far. The other is what I think some of my other questions were just addressed, but what efforts have you made, and what's the position of some of the neighbors? Obviously, you're surrounding one or 2 neighbors, but what's been that process of discussions?
Actually, I'm glad you asked that, because I will have John Adler. Are you one of the developers on? If you could describe, because there's actually been quite extensive communication and attempts to communicate with as many neighbors in the immediate vicinity as possible. So John, if you're there, I don't know if you mind just jumping in and describing kind of the extent that you guys have really gone to speak with the neighbors.
Sure. Hi, folks. John Adler, part of the development team for this project. I'm actually going to turn it over to the other half of the development team, either Joel or Rebecca Frisch, who have been. I can't say that they've spoken to everybody, but I know they've been out several times to knock on folks' doors. And Joel or Rebecca, if one of you can speak to those efforts and any conversations you want to share, that would be terrific.
Sure. Good evening, everyone. I'm Joel, live around the corner of Krosky Street. Super excited to be continuing to develop in our neighborhood. Yeah, so in addition to sending out the letters to everyone in the neighborhood, certainly went around with our kids, who you see here on the Zoom, knocking on everyone's door. Had an opportunity to speak to a few of the neighbors. Appreciate that. Always concerned with the unknown and what's to come with change. I think in general, many of the conversations have been supportive of continuing to improve the neighborhood. Certainly some questions around impact. But I know that some of the neighbors are incredibly supportive. Some of the neighbors have expressed concerns about just general construction in the neighborhood. Appreciate that there's a couple projects going on in the area. And, you know, as local neighbors, you know, willing to continue to hear any questions and needs of the neighbors and see how we can make this project work for everyone.
Terrific.
All right, I have no further questions. Thank you.
Okay, thank you, Bob. Moving down our list, next, Evan Litvin, any questions?
Yeah, what material are you intending to use on the fourth floor, on the party walls, the exposed party walls?
Party walls, we were thinking it would probably be a cement, cementitious panel, a lap siding.
Okay, that's my only question.
Okay, thank you. Flora Becker, any questions?
I have no questions.
Okay, that's great. Jacob Cooper, any questions?
No questions, thanks.
All right. Right, moving down our list. Michelle Saul, any questions? Michelle, you'll need to unmute yourself.
Just a quick reiteration, I did see the list of addresses that I believe you folks were sending material to, but I didn't see any confirmation of certified mailings. Do you have that as well to your area neighbors?
Yes, we absolutely do. So we sent, as I'm sure everyone knows, the Planning Commission provides us a list of addresses, every address within 250 feet. It might be 200 feet. I'm not sure exactly which anymore. And then we have to send that directly to that mailing of letters to each individual person. And I believe
My question is, usually applicants submit the certified mailing list.
This is my fault, and I apologize. I forwarded this to Veronica maybe 3 hours ago.
Okay.
So we have provided that, but it makes sense that you haven't seen it because it was sent so recently.
Okay, all right, thank you. No other questions.
And while I'm trying to further stall, I can see if I can pull it up and make sure that I can show it to everyone. Because yes, we do have it. It was sent out to everyone, and
Yes, and I can confirm that I received that. So thank you. Great. Robin, any questions?
No questions.
All right. And Charles Robbins, any questions?
My questions were addressed. I'd just like to state that I like the removal of the curb cuts off of 21st Street and Nordane.
All right, thank you. Okay, and thank you. And I see that you're screen sharing the certified mailings that demonstrate that you actually put those in the mail.
yes. So just to be clear, what we did actually, because we are presenting them together, I'm bringing up three because we do have three separate properties here. Sorry, but what we did is we took the address list that we got for each of the three properties, understanding that each property may touch a slightly different number of properties, and we combined them all together. So that way, you weren't getting one house that might get Nordane and 516 South 21st, but not 518 South 21st. So we sent all the materials for each of the three addresses to every address that was touched by any of the three properties.
Okay, thank you. Thanks for that clarification. All right, what I'd like to do now is I'd like to open the questions up to the public. And so I'm going to ask if we can use the raise hand feature on Zoom. On the bottom of your Zoom, under reactions, there's a smiley face there. If you click on that smiley face, you will see raise hands. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to ask the members of the public to raise hands, and then I'm going to call on you in the order that you raise hands. And then at the very end,
Please provide your address when you start speaking.
That's right. Please we'll ask you to give your name and your address. And then after I go through all the raised hands, if there's anybody who can't find the raised hand feature on Zoom, then we will open it up to you unmuting yourself without the raised hands feature. So I'll start now, and I think the first person is Ben Geffen, and apologies for any mispronunciations.
You got it right. Thank you. Hi, I'm Ben Geffen. I live at 2030 Naudane Street. And maybe more germanely, I park in the underground parking garage that's accessed on 21st Street, which is directly, the driveway is directly across the street from the project at 516 South 21st Street. And the issue I wanted to inquire about is that, so this is a large parking garage. There are 51 people who park in this garage. It's heavily trafficked in and out at all hours of the day. You can see it in this photo here, actually, the large grade garage door right there. Yeah. So we've routinely had problems when there is work being done in the near neighborhood. There's not a lot of on-street parking, and contractors just love parking their truck right in front of the garage door, which causes a lot of problems. It can cause backups of several cars, both coming out of the garage and also coming down 21st Street and attempting to get into the garage. So my question is, can you provide assurances that the contractor and the subs on site will be told not to leave their cars in front of the garage door? And then if they do, who can people in the garage contact to make sure that the truck is immediately moved?
Excellent points, and certainly something I should have raised already. First and foremost, both Joel and Rebecca and John Adler all live in the neighborhood, and they have a long-term relationship with the contractor. So there will be a lot of communication. They'll be walking immediately past this site every single day, at least once themselves, let alone multiple times. So they'll be immediately present. The other issue is, and see if I can pull up the site plan real quick. We have Rodman Street, and we have a large area back here. So the first thing that's going to happen is the demolition. And so we're going to have a large area in the rear here that other sites don't have that luxury. So if you were building, for instance, only 516, you would have to have contractor trucks along South 21st and Rodman, because they just don't have the access if you're building just on this property. However, we have the corner and this large area back here, which will eventually be parking for each of the sites. So we have that benefit to be able to keep everybody off. And I will personally volunteer John Adler to share his information with everybody, to contact him directly if you don't get anybody. And you can always reach out to me. I just put my full contact information in the chat. I assume it hasn't gone away yet, and I will always reach out to the clients immediately. So.
Okay, thank you. I appreciate the assurance and the contact info, and we'll share it with the folks in the garage just in case there's a problem. I don't expect there to be one. And I'll just wrap up by saying the renderings look terrific. I'm excited to see it's coming to the neighborhood as a near neighbor. I'm supportive of it.
Thank you very much.
Thank you. Next, I think we have Bob Billett. Apologies for any mispronunciations.
Hi, I'm Bob Billett. I live at 2124 Naudane Street. I think that might have answered my question. Naudane is very narrow, obviously, and it would be very hard to do construction staging on Naudane. Will the parking spaces, particularly after 518 is torn down, will that take care of staging for the Naudane Street side of the project?
Yeah, so I'll let either of the developers jump in here and correct me, but the intention is to stage from the rear. And so again, Naudane is very narrow, and South 21st is extremely busy. So the intention is to stage from this rear area. And the only time you'd have people on Naudane immediately was to do the actual front facade and the front work that has to get done, but trying to stay off of Naudane as much as possible.
Okay, thank you. The renderings are very nice looking. So,
You said it, Sean. The only I can see a world in which we might have a cement truck there, you know, for a couple hours on a day where we're pouring foundations. But if the truck can't fit down Rodman Street, for example, but everything else, you know, from material delivery, drywall, offloading, all of that's going to come from the rear, and just, you know, so that everybody doesn't think we're going to be blocking access to Rodman Street for, you know, as long as construction goes. I just want to point out to anybody who's not familiar, Rodman Street is a two-way street, which makes us feel a little bit more comfortable with the staging approach there.
Okay, great, thank you. All right. Bob, did that addressed all your questions and points?
yes, thank you.
Wonderful. Now Mike and Gail Gismondi. Apologies for any mispronunciation. Can you please unmute yourselves and pronounce your name for us, and also give us your address and share your thoughts?
Mike and Gail Gismondi, 2106 Modane Street. I'm delighted that they're finally going to build something at 2104 Modane, but I want to follow up on the parking situation. I have off-street parking behind my house, which is adjacent to the lot at 2104. I'm in and out of my parking spot several times a day. A lot of those times are for medical appointments. I need space directly behind 2104 in either to pull my car out or for room to back my car back in. I'll go out 22nd Street. I don't have a problem with that. But if I come back in, I need space here to be able to back into my parking spot. Either that, or I have to back down Rodman Street to get out of the house, out of my parking street.
So a couple of points, and again, certainly understood. We will never block off the rear of your parking. You will always have access.
It's not the rear of my parking. Anything on the sidewalk directly behind 2104, I can't get out and go east, and I don't have room to come in and back into my parking spot. That sidewalk has to be kept open if it's at all possible.
Right, and certainly understood, and that's what I was going to say. We'll be keeping open this whole area to give you a turning radius. In the event that there will be a situation that needs to block this area for any reason, again, we don't foresee one, we will reach out to you ahead of time to make sure that it doesn't conflict with, you know, a necessary ingress or egress on your behalf.
All right, I have a number of questions. We were handed on 8.5 by 11 paper the plans, and quite frankly, I can't read them. I'm just curious, what is the depth of the property proposed for 2104, the actual building?
It's 41 feet 6 inches.
Okay.
I don't think so, Lauren. I think that one's the small one. I think that one's 38.5.
I think we went to 41.6 on the upper
On the
levels.
second, on the upper floors. Yep, you're right.
Correct.
You're
And
right.
then we went down to 38.6 at the ground, at first floor,
And
Okay.
which is, it's the same as the other two buildings.
And Mr. Gismondi, if you see here, it is actually not proposed to be as deep as your existing home.
Correct.
Okay. No, I don't have a problem with
It's a half a foot shorter.
it's shorter than ours.
It's a half a foot shorter than ours.
That's fine. Okay.
Yeah. And I do apologize if for any reason anybody on this call wants you know, better plans and you know, larger printout plans. I'm absolutely happy to provide them. It just gets unwieldy when when we're sending out things in USPS mail. So if you want more full plans, please reach out to me directly and I'll make sure you get those.
Okay, and also on the plans, there is it a window well for the basement in the front of the house and the back of the house?
Lauren, that's got to be you.
Muted. At this time, we are showing that Sean, do you mind flipping to the floor plans?
Oh, sure.
That might show it more clearly.
Oh. Maybe I could zoom out first so I don't kill everybody.
Thanks.
Here we go.
There we go.
You want to look at,
We are showing two wells. We're required to have an egress well in a, Sean, if you don't mind, just go and scroll down and show the lower level, the basement level. Yeah, so we're just showing two wells so that we can get in two aspects of light into that level and really just make it usable.
Is that level entirely underground?
Aside from 18 inches, yes.
I'm sorry, what?
Our
so
first
we
floor
are,
level- Oh, sorry, go ahead, Sean.
we are starting our first floor level at 18 inches above grade. And so this basement level floor is 18 inches above grade and the remainder is below grade.
Okay, so the renderings you have for the basement, it appears as though you're putting bedrooms down there?
Or a den, yes.
Okay, and going further up, the front of the house have these bay window type of things. How wide are they on the second and third floor?
I think they are 9 feet 8 inches wide.
Okay, they're about almost 10 feet wide. And then how high?
Sean, do you mind flipping to the elevation? I should say at their widest part, they are 5 feet wide, I believe. I'll have to verify that, but so they can't back so as to minimize the visual impact and the site impact of them.
And in this, wait a second, hold on. In the center, how far out do they extend?
They extend 18 inches.
And that's on both the second and the third floor.
Correct.
Then on the fourth level, there appears to be a balcony there.
It's what we call a Juliet balcony. So
It appears to be a balcony.
Correct.
Fine. How far out does that extend?
That is inset from the front of the bay. So that doesn't extend beyond the front of the bay.
Well, how far is that?
So this is actually, I think the issue is, let's see if we can pull this up.
Correct. That it's effectively flush with the front facade of the building.
Oh, I apologize. Technical difficulties.
It doesn't look like that. It looks like it extends out over the second floor.
I think that's because of the mansard. So it's extending beyond the mansard.
Yeah, so just the view is you have this bay and then this mansard is actually angled back. So it's a little hard to see in this rendering, although unfortunately I don't have a better
But well, right there where you have your thing, that's further out than the bay window below it.
This is the cornice line. This is the.
No one will be occupying the cornice.
Then why have it?
It protects the facade below. And also it articulates that cornice line and makes the building look more finished.
So
I've seen a lot of bay windows. I've never seen something put on top of a bay to protect it. I've never seen that. All right.
How far out does that cornice go?
To this point?
Yes.
Okay.
Cornice itself, I think we have the cornice itself projecting 1 foot.
1 foot beyond the bay?
Correct.
So it's 2.5 feet from the wall.
Correct.
Yes.
All right.
And then you're going to put, it looks like, at least on the other drawing, that there is a railing up there.
Correct. The railing would be flush with the face of the building, not the bay.
All right. Your fourth floor on the floor plans shows nothing. Is there a reason for that?
That fourth floor space is actually sort of a, oh, sorry, I went to the wrong one. It is actually sort of a build to suit space. So, you know, as people are building or as people are purchasing the homes, this is meant to be kind of a flex space. If, you know, a lot of people now are working from their homes, they may want an extra office there. They may actually want an extra bedroom. If you're silly like me and have 4 kids, you got to have as many bedrooms as possible and no office at home. So that's the intention, is there would be a few non-structural walls that could easily be erected in this space to divide it up as appropriate for whoever the buyer is.
All right, so then if I understand this correctly, the renderings you have for all the floors can be changed. They're not fixed in stone.
Well, the walls, and Lauren could walk you through which walls are structural or which walls are not. The structural walls could not be changed.
I understand it, but I don't see any structural walls.
The other interior
So
walls.
excuse me if I can just step in for just one moment as chair. Thank you for your concerns. I want to just state that our meeting is focused on zoning issues.
Okay.
And I
all
think
right,
we're talking a little bit right now.
Okay,
about
I
design.
understand. Let me talk zoning then with you. There are 16 houses on the south side of Naldane Street. All of them have basically the same elevation, roughly 28 feet, a couple inches difference between them. You said that the elevation of this house is 41.5 feet, but you didn't include the railing. The railing, I believe, is 42 inches. Am I correct?
Correct.
That
So,
brings,
yeah, yes,
that brings the elevation to 45 feet, not 41.5.
So just to be clear, it's a very good point.
Sean, let me
However,
interrupt you, please. Sean, I'm a member of the committee. These are not zoning questions. These are just further arguing with the developer, which you're entitled to do in another forum, Mr. Gismondi. But the committee has got to hear from many people, and we have to make a decision. So I gather
We have a
that.
concern about the height of the building.
We have the height of that building blocks my whole deck. I can't see
Okay,
any.
so assert your position and let's move on.
Fine. At that height, the front of their house at 45 feet is 17 feet higher than my house. We have a pitched roof. At the height of the pitched roof is the pitched roof is 32 feet high. At 32 feet, you're 13 feet above my house. Our pilot house is 36 feet. You're 9 feet above the top of my pilot house. And you're 17 feet above my deck at the back. This is enormous. This is bigger than anything on the street. And that one example you gave of the house across the street, I can tell you is wrong. This house is too big for this street. There are a lot of Trinity houses on the block, a lot of houses with 30-foot lots and smaller than that. This is way out of line for this particular street. You took the drawings from 21st Street and you put them onto our street, and you took no consideration as to what our street is like. This is wrong.
Okay.
I urge you to vote no on this proposal.
Excuse me, I'd like to just assert myself as chair. Thank you, and for everyone participating in your thoughts. Mr. Gismondo, and Gismondi, I apologize if I've mispronounced your name. I think you've gotten to the heart of your zoning concerns, namely that you find this building too large. If you have other zoning concerns, I'm open to hearing those. It sounds like you have wrapped those up. So what I'd like to do now is, unless you have other zoning concerns, I'd like to move on, because we have an additional 4 folks on the line who would like to speak. And I'd also like all other members of the public to have a moment.
I just have one fast comment, and I'm done. Joel Frisch said that he spoke to us. He did. The last thing I said to him when he walked out of the house was, I wish you weren't putting a 4th story on that place.
Okay, so for you, this is, thank you. So now let's go to Lou Morucci. Apologies for any mispronunciation. And I'm going to ask again, let's focus on zoning. And if you just wish to restate another person's position, feel free to say that so that we can have an efficient use of time.
Hi, I would definitely like to say thank you to the last people who established the fact that this place is much too big for this street. My point.
We need your address, please.
2112 Nordane Street, which would be about 6 houses down from where this beast is going to be built. Okay. First of all, the height of the house is atrociously high for this street. It blocks out the sun, which comes from the east and moves across the city to the west. It will put all of these little houses beside it that you see in another amount of shade, which will block off our light. Not only is the height ridiculously high, I don't know why people can't deal with compliance, but if the house is really high, why is it also the fact that you put these windows, I don't know what you call them, they're not on the first floor, but they're on the second floor and the third floor, which also blocks out light coming down the street. Nordane Street is a very, very small street. We don't get an awful lot of light down that street. By putting these bay beasts out in front of it, you're blocking that much more light off our street. I hope that you will all vote against this monstrous building.
Okay, well, thank you for your position. Now I'd like to go, I think we've, let me move forward through other questions. Judith Guston, apologies for any mispronunciations. Can you unmute and tell us your address, please?
Sure. It's Guston, and I live at 2129 Tryon Street, which seems like it's a little ways away from this building site. But my question is about the source of electrical power. The reason for this is there have been a number of expansions in our neighborhood. I'm the last house on our power line. This is according to PICO. And I now have strobing lights most of the time. And so I don't know whether the source for the power for these homes is coming from the same place that I get mine. If you look at the current street view, what I'm told by PICO is that up on one of those poles right near where this site is where the electricity comes from for our surrounding neighborhood. So I'm just wondering whether you're having extra power brought in, whether we have the same source. If I need to be asking this in a different forum, I'm happy to. But what I don't really want right now is to have like such limited power because there are, yet other, large enlarged properties going up in the immediate neighborhood. Can you give me some help with that?
Absolutely. And so I'll be very quick and not to be dismissive, and happy to have this conversation with you offline since it affects you immediately. But essentially, we're a little premature for where the power is coming from because that has to be approved at the building permit stage. Okay. So once we get zoning, we have to submit building plans to the building permit examiners. And that's when we get involved with the utilities and they do a site utility plan review and they tell us where we're allowed to draw from, where we're not, if we have to upgrade certain services, if if we have to do something different. So it's certainly an understandable concern. My house is also at the end of a line and I get all sorts of fun facts from that.
Well, I have epilepsy, so it's not really fun for me.
I'm very sorry.
So I'm just wondering if there's a point at which I should touch base with anyone in particular.
Absolutely. Again, I put my contact information in the thing. And if you reach out to me directly, as soon as I can get you that information, I will.
I will do that. Thank you so much.
All right. Thank you. Victoria Quigley.
Yes, thank you. I'm 2119 Rodman, and I hear all my neighbors on Nordane concerned about a small street, parking, traffic. as a resident on Rodman for over 30 years on a two-way street, that if cars are coming down one way, you've got to pull up on the sidewalk to get by. And with the construction, the increased in and out of those garages that you're proposing, I have grave concerns of just the traffic plans and the increased mobility on that street with construction and parking access.
Again, excellent point. And unfortunately, there's only so much we can do about construction and access, which we will certainly try to minimize. Just to be clear, so that I don't know if I misspoke or I just wasn't clear enough. We are not proposing actual garages on Rodman. Those will be open air parking spaces, which Lauren described. It's actually going to be using pervious pavers, so that we're allowing for additional stormwater and free flow of the water there.
So they won't be fenced in with opening of gates and garage doors for access?
No, they are not. There's no place for us to put a garage door. There's going to be no garage structure. And at this time, there's no plan for any kind of fencing.
Okay, so it's just open access.
Correct.
And when you're constructing, putting the trucks on Rodman, because obviously they can't go down Naudane, Rodman is a two-way street. How are vehicles, how am I going to be able to access my home with my vehicle?
So the western access to Rodman off of 22nd will always remain open. And so again, we're looking, here's Naudane.
But if there's a truck in the street, you can't get by. The street is as narrow as Naudane with no parking, but is a two-way street. So if there's trucks on the street on Rodman, a vehicle can't go. So you're saying I have to back into the street and back off the street?
No, actually, so just to finish my thought, because we have this whole back area, we are not parking any trucks on the street. They will drive down Rodman to access the rear of our properties, but then they will pull onto our properties and be able to stage on our properties themselves so as not to block Rodman from traffic.
Okay, I appreciate that clarification. Call me cynical. I'll believe it when I see it.
I understand.
We've all had the trouble with access.
Okay. Yes, and to that point, again, I think Mr. Geffen was the one at the very beginning. We will make sure that everyone and anyone who wants it can have a direct phone number or email for anyone, including myself or from the development team, to make sure that if you do have an issue, that can be remedied as quickly as possible.
Okay, thank you.
Okay, thank you. Lauren Sweeney. Please tell us also your address.
Can you hear me now?
Yes, we can hear you.
Okay. 2102 Naudane. So I'm to the east of the proposed house on Naudane.
Mm-hmm.
And I have a number of concerns, but I will start with just saying that I also am very concerned about the height of this building because I live closer to the corner. The light isn't going to be as affected in my house. Also, I don't have any windows on the back. But the design just seems, again, I'm another person who finds the design to be out of place, and the extra height is just really jarring to look at for me. The safety concern I have that I'm going to bring up now, because this has really been alarming me since I got this information. My house on the side of the 2104 property has a covered alley running from front to back. My basement does not go under that covered alley. So when they start digging down into the ground, I don't really know what is below my alley. And I don't know, I'm just really worried about the integrity of my house as they start digging a basement. And so I wanted everybody to be alert to that. But I also, that would happen regardless of what the design of the house was. So that's not really a zoning issue.
So just quickly, if I may, and I know it's not a zoning issue, but it's of utmost importance to everyone. One of the seminal issues in construction in the city right now, everywhere, is the structural stability of the adjacent homes. And everyone has seen danger in sort of what you're describing, Ms. Sweeney, of not knowing what's under the ground there. When we are performing the demolition and the excavation here for these 3 homes, we're required to do what's called a special inspections. We have to have a certified engineer, third-party engineer, on top of anyone from L&I who would be coming out daily. We are required to have a certified third-party engineer on site at all times. So the entire time that any of that work is being done, to certify that we are doing the work correctly, to certify that there is no damage being done to your home, and that everything can proceed safely. So you will see that individual immediately on site and immediately looking at probably the side of your house as the digging is being done. And we can even provide you the contact information for that. And all of that will be done in accordance with structural engineering plans that have to be approved by the city as well. So it's an extremely important issue, and one that we're dealing with all over the city, but is no less relevant here. And I do want to make sure that you know that there will be multiple people with eyes on exactly that problem.
Okay, that is good to know, and I'm very glad I was able to bring this up because it's been worrying with me. And I'm sorry, but I still think the addition on top of the house is just, it's over the top. So, but I appreciate the fact that I now understand what the safety issues will be.
Okay,
Thank you.
Thank you. We now have Andre Sedrov. Apologies for any mispronunciation. Can you unmute and give us your address?
Hi. This is Bonnie Hoke Shedrov, my husband Andre Shedrov. We're at 2130 Naudane Street, and I just want to register that I'm opposed to this. And one of the reasons I'm opposed to it is that I think it violates the quasi-colonial charm of our house, of our whole street. I know we're pretty far away from the light issue, but it will certainly affect us even down at 2130 Naudane. I go back far enough that I remember when there was a huge fight in Philadelphia about the Rouse Towers going higher than Billy Penn's had, and everybody said, oh, let's get over that, let's move on and live in the modern age. And they built them, and it isn't bad, but it's in a carefully zoned area in the center of the city where people don't live. One of the things that attracted us the most to Philadelphia when we moved here some 40 years ago is the fact that it's so livable. It's so livable. And of all the streets around, our block in particular is one of the most livable and charming. Each house, though it's not a historical district, our house is 170 years old. It has a colonial flair to it. All of them do, most of them. And there's a kind of a sameness in charm to the houses. They're smallish, and that's good. I mean, because it means there's more light and air and everything. I agree with other people who have complained about this, that this thing is way too tall. And it violates the spirit of the block, and it will affect the light, and it will affect the charm and livability of the neighborhood. And I certainly don't welcome this project. I realize I'm not saying any big zoning things or anything, but I think those zoning regulations are there for a darn good reason. Okay. And there's plenty of cities you can go to that are just awful to look at because they have, everything gets taller and taller and taller.
Okay. So it sounds like you feel it's too tall and everything coming from that.
Yes, ma'am.
Oh, thank you. Okay. Just want to make sure everybody gets a voice. Terry Clark. Can you unmute and tell us your address and your position or your concerns?
Yes, hello, I'm Terry Clark. I live at 2117 Tryon Street.
I'm
And
sorry. Could you repeat that
pardon?
again?
Sure. My name is Terry Clark and I live at 2117 Tryon Street.
Okay, thank you.
And although not directly impacted by this project, I stand by my neighbors who are in opposition to this because I can relate to the loss of light in a home. I can also relate to the monstrosity that you're building. And what I heard is that you're not even going to live in this house. So you're building this house to sell. And I just believe that this is all motivated by money and profit. And you really
Okay, so
don't
I'm
care
sorry to
about the
interrupt you, Ms.
neighborhood.
Clark. I'm so sorry. I am very interested in your concerns as they relate to zoning. In
Okay,
terms
I'll
of how
restate
the
that.
developer is making money and so on, that's for a different conversation.
Understood. So I stand by my neighbors who are in opposition to this project. It's wrong. You're pushing the limits of the zoning. You're pushing. And all your fancy talk about, you know, all the architectural designs of this home, you're pushing the limits is basically what it comes down to. And I'm in opposition. Thank you.
Okay, thank you. I'd now like to turn to Todd Drake. Can you please unmute and give us your address and state your concerns or your
Sure.
questions?
Thank you, Veronica. My name is Todd Drake. I'm a neighbor at 2129 Naudane Street. I just had one question as it related to the roof, actually. Both Lauren and Sean talked a little bit about the pilot house and the access to the roof deck. And I was just curious if someone could speak to the commitment to not doing the pilot house. It seems like a great idea to not have another height object up on the roof, but the idea of walking down into a roof well, down into kind of a bathtub to get access to the roof from the 4th floor interior seems like it might be a decision that would want to get undone and rethought and converted into a pilot house. What's that commitment to that solution to the roof access? Because a pilot house would obviously compound this conversation if there was some undoing of that solution of walking down into the 4th floor to get to the roof. I'm just curious to hear about the commitment to that.
Yeah, so that is a very good point, and they are.
Hold on one second, please. Todd, can you please repeat your address? I missed it. I'm sorry.
Sure thing, Ben. It was 2129, 2131 Naudane Street. We're a double wide on the street.
Hope I'm not talking over anybody again, and apologies for having done so. So we are not putting in a pilot house. Our plans will not be approved. When you get but as to, you know, what guarantees you can have, it's a very good question. So what happens when a variance is granted is only the plans as they are stamped that day by the zoning board are approved. Anyone else who would want to put in a pilot house would be required to go back through this community process and go back through the variance process again, because that would be increasing the height and would trigger this whole process again. Although I think we could even go a step further, and I'll wait to see a nod from John or Joel or Rebecca that, you know, I know CCRA doesn't support, but with non-opposition from CCRA, we would accept a proviso saying that no pilot house would be constructed on the home. And therefore you'd actually have it in writing going forward that, you know, if somebody ever tried to do it, it would actually be in writing on the permit itself that no pilot house was allowed.
Thank you.
Okay, and I do see John Adler nodding. So yes, we would confirm that proviso would be acceptable and agreed to by us. And I'm sorry, in case anyone doesn't know, I'm speaking quickly to try not to waste anyone's time. a written proviso on the zoning board in front of the zoning board would actually be written down on the zoning permit itself as a requirement to curtail the extent of the variance. So you would get the zoning permit itself and you would see directly on there with proviso, no pilot house may be constructed.
Okay, thanks for that clarification. Todd, I think you've asked all your questions. Is that right? Great. I want to call on Wade Albert, who is legal counsel to us here, so that you can jump in, and then Tanishka, I'm going to jump to you.
So thank you very much, Sean, and I appreciate the comment about the potential proviso, which we will definitely consider. And this is something that I think I've heard a lot of comments from the neighbors who have concerns about the height. And I know this was mentioned during the presentation, and Sean, I think it might be helpful for you to just to kind of explain this again. But in my understanding, and tell me if I'm wrong, if you wanted to build a pilot house, you actually could have or have plans for a building that would have been higher, and you would have been able to do that by right. You would not even have to come to CCRA with a request for a height variance. Is that right?
Yes. So actually what I just pulled up while you were talking was, this is my apologies. Technical difficulties. This is the front elevation of the proposed Naudane Street side, which, I mean, I've certainly heard the concerns about height. None of the concerns about height seem to be raised about the 21st Street homes. They all seem to be raised about this home. So that's why I'm focusing on this one. This is the line right here. You can see 38 feet by right height limit. So regardless of what is going to be built, again, since it's currently vacant, something will be built there. The home can be built to this building line. On top of that building line, you are allowed a 42-inch or 3.5 foot parapet wall. So the parapet wall would go up to this level. And on top of the building height, you would additionally have a roof deck, which would have the same railing, and you would have up to a 10-foot pilot house on top of this height. So the overall height would be about where you see steel guardrail right here. That would be the overall height by right. Again, I'm not suggesting this as a threat. Certainly we looked at this. We are here before you because we don't want to do the by right build. We don't think it's as good. We don't think it's as nice a build, and we don't think it's as good for the neighborhood. It also keeps the front access parking to Naudane and to 516 South 21st, which we think are both very bad for the neighborhood and the walkability. And so, yes, the height will be, no matter what, at least 38 feet, and that's by right under the code. And then if we built to this height, that would be the top of sort of this wall would come down here. On top of that would be a 3.5 foot parapet wall, which we are not showing here. We're just showing the top of the roof. And then on top of that setback, again, this guardrail will not be visible to any pedestrian. That's set back by code and required from the front of the building line. So this height would not be visible to anyone. It would just be this height right here. And that is absolutely correct, Mr. Albert.
Thank you for the clarification.
All right. Any other questions, Wade or Claire?
That's it. Thank you.
Thank you. So I just also want to draw attention in the chat. We had a question from one of the committee members. Are the opponents of all concerned about the height only of the Naudane Street or of all three? And I invite each of you to drop, if you are a member of the public, to drop your views in the chat. One person already did. Now I'd like to call on Tanishka Bala. Apologies for any mispronunciation. Can you unmute and give us your address and ask your questions or share your concerns?
Hi, everyone. My name is Tanishka. My wife and I, Pankri, just moved to 2100 Naudane Street.
So we're right on that corner, right next to Lauren, pretty much in all the visuals, that house that's featured right in the center. Nothing new to add, but first of all, thank you to the folks that put this together, very thorough. I just want to echo similar concerns about the height. To be a broken record, I think it's a significant difference to add that height. My wife and I live on the corner, so we are, we benefit from a lot of that space and extra light. And the difference between our second and third floor light is substantial. So I'm very, very concerned for the rest of the neighborhood with that incremental height on how that's going to impact them. It's going to have less impact on us, but I'm very, very concerned for the rest of the neighborhood in terms of the impact that extra floor will have. And I'm just speaking from our own experience in our house, the difference between second and third floor, even with that large of a gap between our neighbors on the east side. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
So if I may just quickly, because I think this may truncate some of the comments, we're getting a lot of comments about height and light and air. And I went to the wrong page. I'm sorry. I will go, to the shade studies and kind of focus on them some. What we are seeing here is you have the proposed versus the by right. And essentially, basically, because we've pulled away the pilot houses and the, tried to truncate the height as much as we could, there really is no discernible difference in light and air between the proposed and the by right. You can look at each segment, and this, I'll just take this center one for an example. Here you can see there's no added shade anywhere. Here you can see the shade line comes out across the street. It's exactly the same in the by right as it is in the proposed. And here that one's a little dark, so it's hard to see, but I'm happy to give color renderings to anyone who wants to see these. And again, just at a different time of year, you can see the shade study as it plays across. There will never be any shade from any of these three homes at the corner, Mr. Bala. That's why I brought it up, just to show you at this point, the impact of these homes simply will never impact the home at the corner. And as you can see again, here's the shade line right there, and here's the shade line on a by right project. And it's actually the pilot house is reflecting and showing shade on the by right. So I don't want to belabor that point again. I'm happy to provide color drawings and renderings to anyone who wants them. But there will be, I can say unequivocally, no impact whatsoever from the proposed height versus the by right height.
And Sean, just to clarify, by right means what you have the right to, what the owner of this property has the right to build based on the current zoning.
Yeah, so
just again, for the public who may not understand what by right means.
No, I appreciate that. And again, I've been kind of speeding past that. Each of these homes has a zoning district of RSA 5. That means single family attached residential. That under the code, what I've been describing as by right, and I apologize for being glib about it, is that the code allows certain things. So the code says a height not to exceed 38 feet for what's a by right allowance. That's where that 38-foot number comes up. And it's not particular to any block. So I certainly have heard, the comments specific to this block, but it is to all RSA 5 designated properties in the entire city. There's an allowed height of 38 feet. And that's what it means if it's by right. So if we pulled this variance request in the proposed lots, which we're not intending to do, and came back with a by right use, we would not be before this group. We would not be describing or discussing any of the design or any of the aspects of the project. You would simply see construction start, and
right, and that's great, and thank you, Sean. And just what I wanted to do is just clarify what by right means for the public, if they may not know. I'm sorry to cut you off. I'm aware that it's late.
No, certainly, and I apologize. I of course have a tendency to go on. So
no, that's quite okay.
Please cut me off.
All right, so now, thank you. Thank you for that clarification. So what I want to do now is I want to call on Ben Zuckerman, a member of our committee, and I just want to, Ben, before I turn it over to you, I just want to note, you've dropped in the chat the question, are the opponents, are those who are opposed to these projects concerned about the height only on Nodane Street or the height on all three projects? And I encourage everyone to drop your thoughts in the chat. And Ben, you wanted to raise another point, I think.
The by right issues. The by right zoning does not permit the parking that you're proposing. Is that correct? The three open
No,
spaces.
So what would happen is the parking spaces by right would not be allowed. So I apologize. I did not mention that. So the rear access parking off of Rodman would be disallowed. And so if we were to build by right, we would maintain the existing non-conforming use, which is the driveway here and at 516 South 21st and the front loaded garage. So that would stay. We would keep this curb cut by right, and the curb cut on Nodane would remain and would become a home of 38 feet in height with a pilot house and a front loaded garage. Again, we do not want to proceed with that. We think that's not the best for the neighborhood and not the appropriate design, which is why we're going through the trouble. Obviously, even though we could build 3 homes by right, we're going through the trouble and kind of the 6-month process to seek a variance with this group and move forward with what we think is a much better overall project.
Okay, well, thank you.
And
for
one
that
other question about the by right. As I understand what you're saying, you could build a 38-foot house under the current zoning. You could add a 3.5-foot parapet wall on that. And then on top of the parapet wall, you could add a 10-foot pilot house. Is that what you're saying?
No, I'm sorry. So the parapet wall would be in front of that. The parapet wall is a wall, just again, so that I can make sure I'm describing this to everyone, is a wall at the front edge of the facade, the street edge of the facade that extends up as kind of a roof protection. And then behind that, set back 10 feet, would be a 10-foot pilot house. So the pilot house would go up above.
Yeah, but the top of the pilot house would be 7 feet roughly higher than the parapet wall height, not 10 feet.
Yes, so you would have a total overall height of 48 feet.
Okay.
So the 10-foot pilot house gets stacked on top of the 38 feet allowed roof height.
Okay, got it.
Okay, thank you. Ben Weinraub, you're also a member of the committee, and I see that you have a question.
Yeah, just elaborating on the last one. My understanding intent of the parapet wall is so that you can occupy the roof of an structure and have a code compliant railing, thus the 42-inch height. So is there any reason in the proposal, in order to appease the neighbors as much as possible, as well as the developers, that you build the same, structure that you're proposing now to the 38-foot height? You could go lower for the basement, get the same ceiling heights. Is there anything that prevents you from doing that and getting the best of both worlds for everybody, meaning a compliant project as well as the heights internally and roof for the developer?
So I will let Lauren or John describe why we're staying 18, why we're starting 18 inches above grade. But excellent question.
It's also a danger of the foundation condition, which becomes a major underpinning of the existing foundations that are adjacent. So in lieu of doing that, we've opted to just extend the building vertically into the air. The equivalent of the by right parapet height. But so you have a foundation issue. You also have the stoop and the first floor level issue, which I think is relevant and important. But I think most importantly, it's a foundation issue, which brings back the argument of safety and, just added risk when you don't need it.
So I think, Lauren, unless I'm mixed up, you're describing what I believe it was Miss Sweeney raised, which is, if you live in this house and we have to dig down another 18 inches below, we will be certainly getting underneath her foundation walls and creating a much greater safety hazard and risk in the construction process in order to underpin her walls and maintain the structural stability of her wall, which would be the same condition here on 21st Street. Is that right?
It's not forcibly much greater. It's just it's a matter of risk versus reward. And I think in this case, it seemed more feasible to maintain the first floor level, not go down the additional elevation below grade, and to request the variance for the height in lieu of trying to compact the floor levels as much as possible within the by right envelope.
Okay.
I would also add that we would need to sink the first floor 3.5 feet to have a compliant height for these homes, which would necessitate essentially walking down steps inside the front door to get to the first floor of living space, and exacerbate the foundation issue to get us to be a compliant height.
And just one more thing, which I know Lauren pointed out in her design discussion, but if it's most obvious here, I'll try to zoom in. This is the 21st Street homes, and it's the same condition on Naudane, but just more obvious here. We designed the project. Lauren designed the project to try to match up the first floor of windows and doors. So that way you have that continuity that people have spoken about. The same condition exists on Naudane, with the attempt to maintain that line, that general line up and down the block, and not have this kind of piano key design feature, which so many of us have seen on so many blocks. And here you do have just a few steps in to create that stoop feature, just like the house next door.
Hey, thank you. Okay, now is there anyone on the call, any member of the public who has a completely new and completely different point that we have not yet heard? I doubt it, but I'm a big fan of democracy, so I'm going to ask. All right, hearing nothing, I'm going to thank the members of the public for having come and having shared your points of view. I also want to thank the representatives of the project, Sean and Lauren and John and all the rest, the Fishers, for having come. What's going to happen now is that we are going to move into closed committee. So that means those of you who are not members of the committee are welcome to leave this meeting, and the committee will continue its conversation in closed session. And as I stated at the start of the meeting, we will then email our decisions out to the council person, the ZBA, and to the applicant. So thank you for having joined us.
And we will also post the information on our website, and it goes out to the e-newsletter. So
thank you.
Yeah.
Thank you for that, Wade. I should have added that and I did not. So thank you for joining us tonight.
Thank you so much. I appreciate your time. And again, as anybody wants to, please feel free to reach out to me directly with any questions that you didn't feel you had the opportunity to fully vet this evening.
Yes, thank you very much.
Can the recording be shared?
Yes, you will be able to obtain the recording. You can do that by emailing the Center City Residents Association, and it will be available to you.
What is the email address for that?
Sure, that email address is centercity@centercityresidents.org. And let me actually confirm that email for you.
Yeah, and if you could maybe post in the chat so everyone can copy it, that may want
I'd
to
be
see.
glad to. If you can give me
Thank you.
just a second, I will do that right now. So you can, this is the CCRA's, oops, email is right here, and I'll post it in the chat so you can pick it up there. It's easy. It's just centercity@centercityresidents.org.
Veronica, may I ask a process question?
Absolutely.
If this meeting results in a letter that is unfavorable toward the development, is there an opportunity to represent to the community? I assume the answer is yes, with changes after, to address any concerns that would relate to a vote from the committee.
Wade, can I ask you to answer that question, since I believe you know the answer in better depth than I?
Yeah, the short answer is yes. If you change the plans, definitely, then it would make sense for you to come back and make a new presentation. But that's assuming, of course, that the committee, as you said, renders a decision that is unfavorable and you want to change the plans.
Yeah, I mean, if you have a favorable decision, I don't know that we would,
Yeah, understood.
Right.
As great as you all are, all right. Thank you very much. We really appreciate the opportunity, and hope you have a nice night, everybody.
Thank you.
Veronica,
Yes,
Veronica,
please.
just a question Tanish has put in the chat about the recording being shared. We do post the open sessions, don't we?
Yes, so, and that information can also be obtained by emailing the CCRA, and I've put that information there in the chat. So thank you everyone for joining. If you're not a member of the committee, now is the time for you to jump off the call, and now the committee will meet in closed session. All right, so I'll stop the recording.